Hello Year 7, it's Ms Redmond here with your first summary PowerPoint from the forces topic. If you haven't got one already, please stop the video and go and get a pen and a piece of paper so that you can take notes and do any of the little tasks that I give you as we go along. So the title for this lesson is What are Forces? And it's an introduction to the topic. Down the bottom you've got your learning journey here, so feel free to pause the video and write down any of those points. And your DNA is, you might have learned something about forces at your primary school. What forces are at work in this photo? Stop the video and write down your ideas. So what is force? I couldn't resist this photo. So if you're not a sci-fi geek. So obviously the Force from Star Wars doesn't exist, sorry. But forces do, and a force is something that changes the speed, direction or shape of an object. A force can be a push, like the push from a rocket's engine, or a pull, like the force of gravity holding you down. So you've got a picture of, I think it's the Soyuz rocket on liftoff there. You can have contact and non-contact forces. Contact forces act when objects or surfaces are touching each other. For example, friction and air resistance. Hence why we've got a picture of the GB cycling team. They're experiencing friction between their bodies and the different parts of the bike, and also between the bike tyres and the floor of the velodrome, and air resistance because they're cycling through the air. And non-contact forces act when objects are not touching. Gravity is a non-contact force, and these cyclists are also experiencing the force of gravity pulling them down towards the ground. Forces come in pairs, and we call them interaction pairs. So here we've got an example of a gymnast on the rings, and the rings are supporting the gymnast, so this is the force of the rings on the gymnast, and the gymnast is pulling down on the rings, and this is the force of the gymnast on the rings. So you can see that we've just switched the rings and the gymnast around, and that makes an interaction pair because those forces are interacting, and there's two of them. All right, you can measure forces using a Newton meter. That's what this photograph is here. We've used them in class. There's lots of different styles, so it looks slightly different to the ones that we've used. Forces are measured in newtons, and they are named after this person, who is Isaac Newton, who was very famous and very grumpy. He was extremely mean to a scientist called Robert Hooke, who we will mention in a later lesson. Okay, here's your summary. A force is something that changes the speed, direction or shape of an object. Forces can be pushes or pulls. But in an exam or a test, please don't write push or pull, be more specific. Contact forces act when objects or surfaces are touching. Non-contact forces don't require the objects to be touching. Forces exist in interaction pairs, like the force of the rings on the gymnast and the force of the gymnast on the rings, and forces are measured in newtons using a Newton meter.